It's no secret that the MCU's been in a rough spot since Endgame. Despite a handful of decent projects like Thunderbolts and Guardian of the Galaxy Volume 3, the post-Infinity Saga MCU has been plagued with gratuitous cameos and dead-end projects that feel like a colossal waste of time for anyone unfortunate enough to see them. So it makes sense that people, myself included, were pretty skeptical going into this new Spider-Man project. I'm happy to report, though, that Spider-Man Brand New Day is pretty good. Is it perfect? No. But it accomplishes something that I wasn't sure Marvel was still capable of. It reignites the Marvel magic that many of us fell in love with all the way back in Phase 1 by creating an interconnected world that lives and breathes along with the menagerie of iconic comic book characters that both impact each other and the world around them. Now, you may be asking, how does this movie succeed in doing that where so many before it have tried and failed? To which I would reply, stop interrupting. It's rude. Now watch the video. But before I get into the specifics of how Brand New Day brings back that classic Marvel magic, it's time for a spoiler warning! If you were listening, you may have noticed a hint of hypocrisy in what I was saying earlier by critiquing the MCU's previous reliance on cameos while simultaneously praising the interconnectedness of Spider-Man Brand New Day. So what makes Spider-Man Brand New Day's cameos feel so good and organic, while previous cameos feel like little more than bland fan service? To put it simply, Brand New Day's cameos serve the plot instead of the plot serving the cameos. To better illustrate what I mean by that, let's take a look at some previous MCU entries, namely Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and Deadpool and Wolverine. In both of these films, the plot largely serves as a vehicle to deliver the audience to cameos, which each film extracts a significant amount of novelty appeal from. In Multiverse of Madness, the plot takes a detour through the multiverse, largely so that the audience can see the Illuminati, which includes fun cameos like John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic and Captain Carter. In a similar vein, Deadpool and Wolverine drags their main characters to the Void, which largely serves as a device to introduce the audience to cameos like Gambit, Blade, Chris Evans' Human Torch, and many more. Actually, my first ever upload goes more in depth into Deadpool and Wolverine's issues. It'll be linked at the end of the video if you're interested. Now, let's get back to Spider-Man! This movie does include cameos, namely with Bruce Banner/Hulk and Yelena Belova as Black Widow. But importantly, the plot never feels like it needs justification or an excuse as to why these characters are in the movie. Both cameos are directly tied to the main narrative and conflict that Peter is facing without detracting from it. Peter is trying to dig up information on the main antagonist, so it makes sense that he goes to the established super spy Black Widow for intel gathering. Peter is worried about losing control over his recently enhanced powers, so it makes sense that he goes to Dr. Banner, who's been very publicly struggling with a very similar situation for years and has already developed technology to cope. Both of these are tied into the film's central story and don't derail that story. Also, neither cameo overstays its welcome, which I was pleasantly surprised by. And the cameos aren't the only characters that make the world feel alive and interconnected like a comic book. The main cast of Spider-Man, Jean Grey, and even the Punisher all have interconnected arcs that impact the world as well as each other. This is the true brilliance of Spider-Man Brand New Day. It takes that classic Marvel interconnectedness and goes even deeper. The characters included in the film aren't just cameos for the sake of novelty, they affect each other's arcs and tangibly change each other's character trajectories. As per the last Tom Holland Spider-Man film, Peter's best friend and love interest, Ned and MJ respectively, have forgotten him because of some magic multiverse shenanigans. Now, Peter's found them reintroduced to his life, and he's avoiding telling them the truth or reconnecting with them because he believes that knowledge will put them in danger. While this is happening, his powers are going totally haywire, and he fears losing control of himself as Spider-Man. He even goes full-on rage mode at one point, accidentally injuring a cop and beating the ever-living shit out of Scorpion. So to protect those around him when he's Spider-Man, he tries to suppress his enhanced powers, just like he's suppressing his human nature as Peter Parker, who craves human connection with the people he loves. It really is a nice bit of narrative symmetry that Destin Daniel Cretton brought to the character. While this is happening, a young Jean Grey is on a quest to find her sister, who she knows has been kidnapped by the morally ambiguous Department of Damage Control. Understandably, she's fueled by rage, and on her journey to find her sister, harms people with her powers. Hell, she traumatizes Peter, puts some random guy in the way of traffic, ruins Bruce Banner's life, does some dark, messed up stuff with MJ, and that's all before getting into the ethical implications of what her powers actually do in this movie. Then, when she discovers the brutal conditions of her sister's death, her powers flare up, much like Peter's, and she must decide whether or not to kill the man responsible for her sister's unjust murder. Jean Grey, albeit in a roundabout way, helps Peter accept his powers and his dual identity as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. She uses Damage Control's specially designed anti-Spider-Man weapons, both to prove a point, that point being that Damage Control doesn't trust him either, and push him to embrace his new powers. She's also the indirect reason that Peter reconnected with his friends by giving Peter the notes that he would accidentally leave for MJ to find. Peter, in turn, then helps Jean to realize that she's not alone and doesn't have to take this guy's life, talking her down from killing the man by opening up his mind to her and showing her a touching memory of Aunt May, a maternal and guiding force in Peter's life that the young character of Jean Grey has been shown to be missing in her own life. Then Peter takes a near-fatal sniper bullet from the Punisher. That was meant for Jean. Remember how I said Jean's powers were flaring up? Yeah, she basically did a kilometer-wide telepathic time stop, so Punisher, somewhat understandably, is like, weird, I better deal with this, and then sets up a sniper to shoot Jean Grey, and Peter jumps in the way. This sacrifice shows that Peter was serious when he said he was there as a human connection for Jean, as well as gives Jean an opportunity to use her power selflessly by saving Peter's life, thus serving as a capstone for both her arc and Peter's. This parallel arc between Jean and Peter is at the core of the film, and even more so than the cameos, serves to make these characters and the world they occupy feel interconnected on a narrative level. Hell, even Punisher has a mini arc as a foil to Peter that makes him reconsider his methods and relationship to Spider-Man. It's these connected character arcs and the palpable chemistry between characters that make the movie feel so satisfying and reignite that classic Marvel magic. Of course, this movie didn't invent intertwined arcs. My favorite mirrored arc is in Avatar: The Last Airbender with Aang and Zuko, actually. But still, these interconnected arcs and the chemistry these characters share are largely what the MCU has been missing since Endgame. And it's this chemistry and Marvel magic that makes up for some of the slower moments in the film, because these characters and this world are just so entertaining to watch. Anyway, I'm a YouTuber, so you probably know what I want. Do the like, comment, subscribe stuff if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!